ended up, I got my master's, pretty good communicator at Shippensburg State University now. And that's the Army workout. But this is a Jeep I rode around in a lot, and this is the aircraft I flew a lot, and I just broke the propeller off. So.
Yeah, that's what glue's made for there.
Yeah, and this is the first start of our career in the early 60s, and had a Viet Nam tour, and
wow,
a bunch of aviation stuff, and our little family in 1965.
Yeah. My goodness. Is this you?
Yeah, I was getting my first air medal in Vietnam. That's Vinegar Joe Stilwell's son.
Oh, okay.
Remember World War II?
Uh-huh.
Chenault and Joe. They have. Well, that's his son.
I see.
And that's he and I flew together. We received Purple Hearts, and that's another guy, Swartz. And I don't know. Then somewhere in the 70s, I had 2 Vietnam tours. And I had 3 combat tours.
Right.
One. And then that's the infantry school. I was actually over the infantry cat in Germany. Then I had my first and only assignment in Texas. I was the CH-47 Chinook Company commander of 3 Corps. And we did missions. In fact, this was in Guatemala. And Kissinger came down to meet us. And that was a pretty big mission.
Yeah.
Saved a lot of lives, thank God. And then we...
When were you in Guatemala? What year was that?
That's February 76.
I see.
January 76.
Yeah.
What's it say? March. What's that say? Okay, that's February the 25th, and we came home.
Is this you here?
Yeah, it's me there.
Oh, right here? Okay, yeah.
And this is funny. He walked up to me, and I saluted right here. I saluted him, and every military unit, Tom, has a call sign. Like we were wagon masters.
Right.
I says, Wagon Master 6. He looked at me, and he said, "What is this wagon master?" He called me off guard and said, "Well, it's we're big and we carry things like wagons used to do."
Okay.
And I was the Black Hawk guy in the Pentagon, and this shows.
Oh man.
This dusty thing shows that you're a member of the DA staff, and I got promoted to lieutenant colonel there.
Right.
Can you imagine how big that guy is?
Wow.
His name was Dale, or Odell.
Yeah.
And I remember looking up to him.
Because you're looking up to him. And you're what, about 6'2"?
Well, I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
I'm 6'1.5".
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So he's about 6'5" or 6'6".
Yeah, here he is. He said, "What is this wagon master?" And if you still listen to him, that's the way he talks.
Yeah.
That was promotion 06 at Fort Jackson.
Yeah.
I got to come out of Panama, and I got to be the G3 at Fort Jackson.
Yeah.
And every group of trainees that come in, they get a week of marching, and they do a Friday night passing review.
Yeah. Well, let's, you want to just sit down right here?
Oh, we can go in the other room.
You want to go in the other room?
This is my battalion command, basically, and that's my brigade command.
Oh, goodness.
So,
are you going to let me take some of these pictures off the wall and return them to you tomorrow?
Well,
because I can take them home and scan them. That's what I need to do. I don't want to take them all off the wall. No, I just want to take 2 or 3 of them. Will you let me do that?
Yes.
Okay. I just need to, unless you don't happen to have any of them already on the computer or anything.
I don't think I'd have them.
Okay.
No,
because I've got a scanner that I can just scan them and I'll return them to you
After
tomorrow.
20 years, Tom, I've been chastised. I'm just starting to fix it's called I'm fixing to start my box. My shadow box.
Oh yeah, your shadow box.
And so
there's your Purple Heart just sitting there on the floor.
Yeah, it's been in a briefcase for almost 20 years. So I said it was time.
Waiting for this one thing to come in.
Yeah.
Glenn Dowling, a friend of mine, said, a lot of people have their medals in the boxes, and you don't. I see. So he's chastised me, so I wouldn't
you'd
do
be
it.
amazed. The veterans I've interviewed, you'd be amazed where they have their medals sometimes. I mean, they're just, oh yeah, they're just in boxes, throwing it in boxes. That's right.
What happened,
A lot
Tom?
of people have shadow
What
boxes.
picture do you want, and I'll get them down for you.
Well, let me
just come back and
let me look at after I visit with him and come
Okay.
back and just sort. Now, what were you were a drum major?
No,
No.
this was a
Oh, this was given to you by
Yeah, yeah.
by the band.
All these gifts came from NCOs of the various companies.
Okay.
There was
Just
1, 2,
battalion.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 companies, and I had infantrymen, MPs, infantry, artillery, and I had the band. The post band was assigned.
Right.
Well, the NCOs gave me this.
I see. Yeah.
And
It's a great baton.
the lead NCO actually used it, the mace.
Yeah.
But he said
I was drum major in my high school band, so I know.
this
Yeah,
was
you know.
Yeah.
used as a messenger. They put messages in this
Oh, I see.
top part during
Yeah.
the World War II,
Uh-huh.
and that's where that
I
came
forgot.
from.
I didn't know that. What if it was
Yes.
screwed?
See, it's bent and broken, but he said they worked it so that it would be, no one would ever suspect it. So I thought it was pretty nice that they gave that to
And
him.
as you and I are not built to run, you know, it took me a year or two to know that male winners at races are 5, 8, and 9.
Yeah. Right.
But I won a 10K race for my age group. one race when I was younger.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But this was all in, well, to defend those veterans, see, if you're a combatant or if you have upward mobility, you're moving. If somebody stayed 15 years someplace.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Right.
So we travel in boxes.
Yeah.
And in defense of all these veterans, they have it broken. Well, I've got that stuff out in my garage. Well, I've been out there 13, 14 years. But we used to travel in boxes because we're up and gone again.
Yeah.
Anyway. We can sit down in here.
All right. Well, I like your museum. I really do. Yeah.
I think we'll sit right here.
Yeah. No, this will be good.
Why don't you slide in there?
This will be good.
This will be good. I didn't.
Letters.
You know what you want to talk to me about. I thought
Yeah.
I might.
Yeah, the toughest part about doing this show, and I guess you've seen the show on KAMU.
No, I haven't.
Oh, really?
I don't. I've got to figure out how to get it.
Oh,
I have, and I apologize because I've been wanting to watch it.
no, that's okay. We've been
No?
doing it for a little over about a year and a half now. As a matter of fact, it's on every week, and it's called Veterans of the Valley. And I've had a couple of your BSA guys on. Of course, before I even knew, I had Bob Pardo on, and I had who else had the prisoner of war.
Al. Let me get my
Yeah.
pen. I figured, where's my
Yeah,
pen?
yeah. Those are the only two I think. I think you're just the third from your group that I've had on.
Well, I want to get that out of the way early on because I
Yeah,
thought.
Al Meyer and Bob Pardo, and now you.
Yeah, you had Bob.
Right, and Al.
Done. And done.
Right. I know there's a lot of.
John, he served after you for a few years.
Oh, I've had John on.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was a member of your group.
Well, he comes
You talking about John with Merrill Lynch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he's,
I've had John on. Yeah.
He
Right.
he served the least of combat, but
Right.
still he had a reserve time, so we let him come.
Right.
Kurt is very outspoken fighter pilot, older, but he has a lot of stories. He's an aircraft expert. Like some people keep butterfly, he keeps airplane pictures. Ray Burns not attending lately. Bob Cook, you would just love him. CW4 retired. A lot of armed helicopter time. Very well spoken, very good guy. Henry Hill is a man of many talents, and he was a fighter pilot.
Right.
Had a full career, ended up at A&M and ran Glenn for a long time. Durwood was a navigator, but Durwood is just a load of fun and a great Aggie. Worked at the foundation after he retired. He's class of 60 at A&M, but he went over to North Vietnam a lot.
Right.
He has a lot of missions. Ken Lovelace, I think he told us yesterday he was shot down nine crashes.
Wow.
8 helicopter, 1 fixed wing. Parkinson's or something setting in on him. But if you interviewed him early,
right,
when his medicines,
right,
like when he comes to BSA, he can talk the first 30, 45 minutes. Then he starts.
Right.
A lot of talking and eating happens voluntarily, but not with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love him, and I love his sacrifice for our nation.
Right.
Don Nicholson, old lad, class of 49.
I called him, but I just never gotten together with him.
He had a long, strong military career. I mean, he flew the big things, like he flew B-29s over Korea.
Right.
He flew B-52s over Vietnam. He didn't see a lot of blood, but he did that high level stuff.
Right. Right.
But he's a wonderful man.
Yeah. Half
Indian.
Yeah.
Ty Newton has been in the community a long time. He flew a lot of Air Force things that kill people. Those C-147s that shoot things down, C-130s. He has a lot of combat. A very nice man. Ed Charles is a naval aviator. It'd be great to have him. He had a Navy career off carriers. And then had another career at A&M as an oceanography thing.
I see.
This gentleman, you'll have to work a little harder. Class of 38.
Wow.
World War II vet. He dropped the 82nd over Italy. He was on a mission where our own Navy shot down an enormous number of our own cargo with 82nd Airborne kids in it. He was on the periphery and didn't get shot down.
Yeah.
He can take you back to World War II.
Yeah, that's good.
And Bob Wilkinson, he has a long career in the Marine Corps, and he was one of the first people to fly in a flight detachment in Washington. He flew Eisenhower, and he's got a story about Eisenhower in Western movies and Mamie. Eisenhower had his own seat up here, and every time there's a Western movie release, they would put Eisenhower would get it, and they'd go to Camp David. For some reason, she asked the pilots to stay. They sat back and back with her, and she started talking and said, "Mamie!" They said, "Shut up," but I could tell them to shut up. But she loved the aviators. Well, that's a story he could tell you.
Oh man, that's great.
And he played Eisenhower at the George Bush Library recently for
is that right?
Some kind of deal.
I'll be darned.
But and the better you get to him, the better, because he's getting a little older.
Yeah.
This is a different perspective. Lieutenant Colonel now in the reserves, a lawyer. But he'll tell you things like they have evidence that...
he was a JAG, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And he ran for office.
Right.
But he'll tell you things like that some of the guys that are supposed to be bombers show indications of drug in their system, what they did. Others look like they were chained to the vehicles. Yeah. He has a total different perspective of Iraq than a combatant does.
Right. Good. I'm glad. Good. That's a lot of good work. Well, tell me about you. And
read that, because I just did that for my high school reunion. See if it sparked any questions from you.
Right. Okay. The Army after graduation from A&M, or you came straight out of the Corps in '61, and then sort of take me from, where'd you grow up?
Born in Mart, lived in Waco 10 years.
Yeah.
Moved to Bryan in '49.
Right.
Became an Aggie like everybody else who moves here. went to Allen Military Academy Junior College, which I'm very proud of, and I learned about the military there, and also I did pretty good as far as leadership goes, and so they recommended me to go into advanced ROTC, which I did 2 years at A&M, and then I went a third year at A&M and graduated in 61 with my commission.
Right.
And basically you're commissioned one day, like in my case, 26 May 1961, graduate 27 May, and I went on active duty 6 weeks later, and went to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was commissioned an infantry officer. Went through my basic, and at that time I'd always loved aviation, and my uncles had been a combat veteran and almost a hero in World War II to me, and applied for flight school, was accepted. So from the infantry school, I went to flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Graduated, they sent me through another transition course. So I go to Fort Bragg, and in 1963, we deploy our own aircraft to Vietnam. We flew our own aircraft to, and I have the places written down here.
Yeah.
Newfoundland, the Azores, and Madrid, and
What did you fly?
it was a CV-2B Caribou, a de Havilland product from Canada, but it was real rugged, extremely good for short field, short takeoff, short field work, short takeoff distance, short landing distance.
Lead pilot? You were.
I was when we deployed to Vietnam. I was a first lieutenant aircraft commander. Had two very senior captains assisting me to get the aircraft to Vietnam. A lot of times, like the Air Force, you'll have a senior guy in the back, but you have the young pilot in the front, could be a second lieutenant. Well, early on they honored the ability versus the rank. Yeah. In many cases. So most of us that flew our 18 aircraft to Vietnam were very young, first lieutenants. And had a tour in Vietnam early on. There were only 13 to 15,000 over there, and a lot of aviation, very few helicopters. It was small fixed wing and the Caribous. And we provided support to the combatants of that time, which was Special Forces. And they were out training in the mountains, and in the Delta they were training Montagnards, or South Vietnamese. And we were their lifeline. We took them food, we took them building material, fuel, ammunition. We brought them back and forth to civilization, and if they didn't have a strip, we airdropped them supplies. If they had a short strip, we sort of crash landed on them. 1,000-foot strips, and little roads is what they were. And I was wounded in Vietnam my first year, 1963, 27 August 1963. And that was my first tour in Vietnam. And later in 67, our nation was involved in the Dominican Republic. And so I went down there on a combat tour, that crisis, and then I returned to Vietnam 68, 69 for my third combat tour. So they got a lot out of me in my 60s, in the 60s.
Absolutely.
Had 3 combat tours, and
2 in Vietnam, 1 in the Dominican Republic.
Felt sort of used up already.
My goodness. So tell me about when you were wounded in 63. What were the circumstances there?
We were flying over a place called Phan Thiet, South Vietnam. It's northeast of Saigon, and I allowed the weather we decided not to fly instruments, so I allowed the weather to push me down a little bit, and we were apparently a blast of machine gun fire went past our tail section, and the crew chief was running forward, went around, exploded into the cockpit area. And exploded meaning I couldn't hear. In fact, the first thing I thought, I've lost my hearing for life, because the old helmets we wore in those days were not as good as a good football helmet. They did have earphones, but I mean the protection wasn't there. But there was an explosion and a little pain, and I immediately gave it adequate power, and we climbed well into the clouds and above the clouds, as a matter of fact. And I checked the crew, and one young man the instrument between our radios was blown all the way back in the back of the aircraft. He wasn't hurt. But my flight buddy, Jim Covington, a lot of the pieces had come up through and hit his left leg. So he went back and they bandaged him up with some stuff. And then I looked down, my ears quit ringing, and I had blood on my arm. So it knocked out a system or two in the aircraft. And so I landed without certain things that you'd like to have and made a safe landing. Back at Da Nang, we were stationed in Da Nang. And we went to the flight surgeon. And you hear your young men always have their stories about Purple Hearts, and a leg is missing, and or they're deceased. And so they grabbed us and said, "You're going to the Air Force dispensary." And we didn't have a choice, so they took us. And they saw Jim first and picked pieces out of him and got him cared for. Then he came into me and he said, "Let me get all this stuff out of your arm, or let me work on your arm." He said, "You guys are getting a Purple Heart." And I said, "Oh, no way." I said, "I'm not hurt that bad." And he said, "Well, would you rather that round been a foot closer to your head and blown your head off? Would that have made you feel any better?" Well, he made a point.
Yeah.
So he picked out some metal out of my arm and treated that and released us. And we filled out the forms, and you had to tell them, don't tell your wife or whatever, next of kin.
Right.
We did all that. And I found the initial message not long ago.
Yeah.
So that was it, and they...
Because I guess back then, if you said to notify their wife, then the wife has a car drive up or something like that. So
Well,
or something, then that...
Tom ever wore it. Apparently there's a learning curve.
Right.
When the first cab deployed to Vietnam in 1960-something, I remember the postmen were delivering the telegrams initially.
Right. Yeah.
And a lady opened her mailbox, and there was a telegram that her husband was dead.
Yeah.
And then they started bringing a chaplain, then an army officer would come.
Right.
So we refined that. But it was brutal.
Oh, yeah.
All during all the wars.
Yeah. Remember the scenes from We Were Soldiers about that.
So one of my buddies that found out about it, and he's in that picture, anyway, he wrote his route. Terry Ross had been wounded. So Myrna found out. Then she asked me, so I had to tell her. I said, "I'm fine." But you have the choice not to alert your family if you have a minor.
Yeah, I see. So that was in what was your main mission in Vietnam? I know it's probably...
This was before helicopters, and we basically, in 1963, we provided essential materials, supplies to the ground soldiers.
Okay.
In our case, the Special Forces.
Right.
This was fuel. This was bamboo or building materials. It was live rations. It wasn't boxes. It was pigs, chickens, cows. We lined them up in the caribou and strapped them up, and let me tell you, it's a little exciting driving down the big fancy runway and the cows decide to move around. Well, the airplane moves around with them because they're a little heavy. So 4 or 5 cows can literally move you around the runway, and that was rather neat. And then we airdropped. The South Vietnamese forces would take their woven baskets and put pigs, chickens, and all kind of animals in them, and we would go in very low and drop those and where they wouldn't drift away for the enemy to use. They would just land on the little outpost or wherever they were. So we air landed to very short 1,000-foot strips, or we air dropped to areas that didn't have a strip. And we brought them back to civilization in a way. We rotated the people.
Right.
That's basically was our life each day. We got up, we flew missions. I flew mostly in I-Corps, which is very treacherous. The mountains are very unforgiving. They're peak after peak. It's heavy foliage. If you go down, you find an aircraft. They never find the aircraft. It's triple layer jungle. And during the monsoon season, not only are the maps useless, there's no navigation aids. So you must learn that terrain. You must learn it. Our young aviators in Iraq learn the terrain. Whatever's out there they can see, they've learned it.
Right.
In case the weather's so bad.
Right.
So there's none of this climbing up to 1,000 feet and asking Atlanta Post Control to give you a vector home.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I might throw this in, Tom. I talked to my uncle who flew combat missions, fighter pilot in World War II, up through Korea and Vietnam. And I asked him what was his priority of fears. Weather, maintenance, and then the enemy. We're amazed that we look at all the movies, but a lot of times where you need to get home with minimum fuel is weathered in.
Right.
You don't have many options.
Yeah.
Or your only way to get out of weather is to fly to the coast, for example. Normally the weather breaks at the coast. Weather is a critical factor, and in Vietnam it was critical. And then maintenance, if something goes wrong on your aircraft, you don't make it back. And then, of course, the enemy, that can be a deadly situation. But in aviation, the priorities of survival are a little different than a ground commander, for example, or a ground officer.
So did you have any, I mean, just besides being wounded, I guess there were some flights you remember too. I mean, some flying scares, or
well, the most serious actually put a fear of God in me, and the most was not when we were being shot at, and we were shot at quite often. All the times you can see the tracers, but we took a mission on a very bad weather day. We shouldn't have gone, but you don't tell first lieutenants that they shouldn't go on a mission. It's like telling a child not to do that. But, so we went and we took off this little 1,000-foot strip, and the weather was real severe. And I moved out the only way you could visually, as far as I could. And then when I saw the weather was going to turn violent, I started climbing, and I got a little terrain clearance. But we got in such a terrible downdraft that it basically took the aircraft away from me. I had basically no instruments, no nothing. People were screaming in the back. I was putting maximum power in to try to keep the downdraft from driving us into the mountains. And it was a real traumatic situation. And I was just closing my eyes and trying to let your behind tell you what's level flight, because I had no instrumentation. And about the time we were going to hit something, I know God took over my life, and we shot straight up.
Wow. I'm
taking off power, I'm retrimming everything, and it turned us loose about 7,000 feet. Well, as we always do, we turn 090 and go to the coastline of Vietnam, and you normally break out. But the next time I broke weather, next time I went into the weather, I broke out in cold chills. And any aviator that stays a career has got to work through those things. In fact, one safety officer told me when I was a young man, he said, I worry about every aviator till he comes to me and tells me he's had the you-know-what scared out of him. If you've really been scared to death, you act a little differently. Hopefully you don't lose your guts, but you're a little bit different. Young people act and then think. Older people think and act. When you're young in combat, you act and you think if you're still alive. Well, things like that make you think a little bit more. But anyway, that was and it...
was that on your first tour?
Yes, first tour. And I worked, of course, I worked that out, and I have probably over 300 hours of actual weather time, so I'm a pretty high weather pilot. So I've got a lot of weather time for an Army aviator. But
then your second tour in the Dominican Republic, what was that?
I was a liaison with a lot of the South American countries. I worked in a joint J3 headquarters. I worked with a lot of Latin American armies. I worked with our U.S. Army. I visited outposts and observation points along critical routes throughout that city of Santo Domingo. And they would basically try to kill us as we went through this lines of communication to supply and help people. And it was not as strenuous combat-wise, but again, you're separated. When you're a young man and you have a family, you know, it's hard. So just being separated. And we got shot at some, but it wasn't. I still flew, but it wasn't really a combat flying. It wasn't really combat flying. But our country did a good thing, I guess, by stabilizing the Dominican Republic.
Right. And then you went back to Vietnam.
I went back to Vietnam in 68, 69. I had a very challenging flying position, but I swore way back then I could never say anything about it, so I still won't.
Okay.
But it was one of those missions where you couldn't talk about it, or they threatened you with your life in jail for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. It was a sensitive mission, and but it was demanding. Mm-hmm. If I was shot at during this one, I didn't know it. I'm sure I was, but I worked very hard that tour and flew a lot of hours. But I didn't have the direct exposure that you and I have,
right,
to the enemy that I had in '63.
Right, right.
Now like Iraq, every place in combat zone is dangerous. My little place where I lived, you can't call it a villa or anything, it was just a little hole. It was rocketed one night in 1968, and it tore up the walls, and I tried to get under a bed. I couldn't get under, and it tore up some things, but you know, a lot of people lived through that.
Right, right. Then after Vietnam, you had a whole other career as a command officer, right?
Yes, I was blessed, and I say that because being a leader of soldiers is a powerful thing. Yeah. And in '65, I got to be a headquarters company commander of a large headquarters company, and then waiting to go to my second combat tour, I got to train young soldiers who I still worry about. They came from the Northeast. They were so wonderful. And I know most of them went to Vietnam. I'm going to go up and check the roster someday against the wall. But they were wonderful young men. I was a basic trainee company commander, infantry. And then when I had my 2 years back in country, they shipped me off to combat again. When I was able, in aviation for a long time, aviation companies were commanded by majors, and they were big companies. So in '74, I got to command a very large CH-47 medium helicopter, Chinook helicopter company at Fort Hood. And we worked all around 3 Corps. A wonderful gentleman named Robert Shoemaker commanded us, and we were the lifeline in Central America. And if the earthquake occurred in Central America, our company went. They went in the early '70s. We went back in January '76 when a 7.6, what's the rating it gives you? Here, 7.6 on the Richter scale. Hit Guatemala, and we deployed 8 aircraft down there. And I commanded that contingent, over 100 people, 8 aircraft. And Tom, we literally saved a lot of lives. When the earthquake hits, it destroys all the roads, lines of communication, all the bridges. It destroys food resources. So we were taking water, corn, and beans to the countryside. Loads, thousands of pounds daily. And the water was the most critical. Right. Because everything was destroyed. The life support was destroyed. And these were going to the Indians, if you will, the Indians of Guatemala. And I have one very memorable memory of an Indian woman kneeling and praying underneath the Chinook bubble of our helicopter, thanking God for us. And that brings it. The soldiers love to do those type of missions. Sure. Much more than you like
humanitarian.
Like pull a trigger. You'd much rather do a humanitarian mission.
Sure, exactly.
And that was a blessing to all of us. And I wrote an article about that when I got home, and it was published. But
so were you all over the country of Guatemala? I mean, doing this?
Yes, we went out to where the epicenter, and we supplied critical supplies throughout the country.
Was it near Guatemala City, or is it?
No, the epicenter was, I think it was like southeast of Guatemala. Where it was near a soccer field. If you can visualize a sideline of a soccer field, well, you went up to the line, it was moved over a full yard. Yeah. So the earth at that place moved a yard. Yeah. It split a yard.
Exactly. Yeah.
which you can tell by all the buildings and all the houses collapsed.
Right.
Because they exaggerated them.
Uh-huh.
And then I was...
I asked that because my son lived in Antigua, Guatemala, for 2 years, and I went and visited him last summer. He doesn't live there anymore, but I went and visited him, and so I got to spend a week in Guatemala. It's a fascinating country. It really is. Antigua's about an hour out of Guatemala City.
When you're in the military, you sort of put on blinders to the political situation.
Yeah.
But as I look back, I don't think things were going very well between Guatemala and the United States. I
Right.
don't think there was a lot of respect or some discontent. But after that, those people loved America because they saw representatives from their armed forces come down and help them without demand.
Right.
It just totally changed things.
Exactly.
How they are now, I have no idea. But
Yeah.
I mean, we were on local television. They came out and just made us feel like, heroes. But we were just down there helping.
Right. Right.
And that's the way U.S. forces should be utilized, if possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as the Army transitioned and gets smarter, they started selecting battalion commanders and brigade commanders by a board of officers. So maybe 3 different groups of officers look at all the files and say, we'd like for this guy to be a commander. Because that's, in the Army, the battalion brigade commander fight the wars. They fight the battles. Generals hear about what's going on, but the lieutenant colonels, battalion commanders, aviation, infantry, armor, the brigade commanders fight the war. So I was honored to be one of 23 selected for aviation battalion command. Then later, one of 7 selected for aviation brigade command. So I had the honor of commanding 7,000 young people at Fort Rucker, Alabama. First Aviation Brigade Air Assault. And it was a 5 battalion force, and some of them were combat, some of them were training.
Right.
But it was an honor to do that. And I chose to retire. I felt fulfilled. I stayed in to be with soldiers, and I felt that was sort of over. And I chose to. I told my leadership that I wanted to go to Texas and see how the civilians lived. So I said, go back to Texas.
Right. So you retired in '87?
Retired in '87 and was officiating a football game with Henry Hill, driving along. Colonel U.S. Air Force retired Henry Hill, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm clearing land, building a home. He said, well, why don't you teach at Blinn? Would you like to teach at Blinn College Station? Well, long story short, 13 years and 10 of them as a full 12-hour semester. Call them adjunct professors because I chose not to stay there unless I was teaching.
Right.
So I taught 12 hours a semester for 10 years and enjoyed it, taught journalism and communications, and retired at 2000 from Blinn.
Right. And you're a football official for 22 years.
Yeah, I officiated a few years in the service. I couldn't, the military is very demanding, but I had a staff job and everybody went to the officers club on Friday nights. I'd run to get my uniform on. So I officiated some great places, Washington, D.C., great officials up there, Alabama, Panama, South Carolina. Oh, the best chapter I officiated was in South Carolina. Best organized. I mean, we all love Texas, but they were absolutely the best organized football chapter, officiating chapter I've ever been around.
Yeah.
But 8 or 9 years, and I came back here in '87, started officiating, and so I've been to Hempstead a bunch of times, Franklin. Yeah, I did some Bryan High and all that other stuff, but I loved the Leons. I loved Franklin. I mean, everybody in town. It reminded me of one year in Alabama, wasn't it? Little town. But if places like Franklin and Leon, if you weren't at the football game, you were up to no good.
Right.
You probably should have been arrested if you were downtown.
You were in somebody else's house.
And you go to, and I hope we support Bryan High better, and solid, but you go to some of their games, well, I think some more people show up sometimes in Franklin or Leon than they do maybe at Bryan High. But
you're probably right. But
I enjoyed that and very much, and it kept me around young people, if
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very proud of my volunteer time with FCA and Special Olympics. I did
Right.
a lot of time with them. But
Right. I see that. Well, it's a great story. I'm going to be honored to tell it. What we do on the TV show, and I should have brought you a DVD of one of them just so you can see, but it's very simple. It's a 30-minute show, and we'll do it. We do it over at the KAMU studios. You know where that is on campus?
is that right at the parking lot? Or?
Yeah, right off of, it's on Houston Street there, which is right as, it's right, here. You know, you're going on George Bush, right there where the former students building is. That street that goes into campus is called Houston Street. Where the former students building is there
Yeah,
off
those
George
two,
Bush.
okay, Houston.
It's right between the foundation building and the former students building.
yeah.
That street that goes right up next to Kyle Field.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just turn right on Houston Street, right onto campus. That first building on your left will be KAMU, so one-story
this
building.
big one,
right
by the
there.
old tennis court.
Yeah. The
Okay.
tennis courts are actually behind the building. KAMU is right there. It's a one-story building, right there on your left. First building you get to on your left. There's that driveway first that winds around to the foundation building, which is right here.
Where a lot of people park.
Yeah, right. This is the former students building.
I know where.
Yeah, one building. Just turn into the parking lot just beyond the building, right there, and you'll just park behind the building, right behind KAMU. There's a little ramp that goes up the back of the building, and there's a door there. You'll ring the doorbell and tell them who you are, and they'll let you in. And we start taping at 1:30, so if you can be there about 1:15, that'd be good. We record it just straight. We record straight to live, which means we don't break. We just start talking, and you'll be sitting pretty much just like we're right now. You'll be sitting in a chair. I'll be sitting in a chair. I'll do a little introduction, and then I'll turn to you, and you and I'll just have a conversation. About halfway through it, we'll go to some photographs. And you'll see the photographs. You can sort of describe what we're looking at, and we'll do just pretty much what we've done right here. Just let you. I'll lead you in the directions that I want to go. And
Would you want more? I mean, I can talk about the combat experiences. I've got a ton of those, but I don't know where you want to go.
I want to talk about your 3 combat missions. I want to talk about then your command tours in the 70s. And then as we have time, talk about your post-retirement career as a teacher, as a football official, all the things. I want you to talk about your family. We'll get it all in. You know, we'll get it all in. It goes quicker than you think, 30 minutes, but we'll move on.
Tom, you may not remember, but for 8 or 9 years I did, for FCA, I did Taking Time Out for Jesus.
Right.
And I related when you called me because I've gotten young athletes, as wonderful as they were, Christians, they would call me, Mr. Rosser, I just got a final. I can't, the guy won't let me off or something. And I would always ask him, I'll come to Cane Hall and interview you when you can be available.
Right.
I'd get these calls once a month. They would, sir, I can't make it. And so I said, okay. And if sometimes I had one in spare, but I did it the same way. I'd go up to them, introduce them, and I always talked to them first. We always shared a Bible verse or two.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to ask you about your family, your faith, your football, your coaches, or your track coach, and then we talked about. Then the last part of the program, we'd take a break and talk about their faith. Yeah. Who inspires them on the team. But I'd have these last minute changes. I thought, when you called, I said, I know how he feels.
yeah, that happened, but I appreciate it.
But we were on KAGC, and I said, nobody ever listened. Yeah. And I thought that too. I said, well, I gave the kids a copy of the tape. They had to pay $1.
Yeah.
Because of NCAA.
Right, exactly.
I kept thinking, I said, I almost want to come out of retirement when you guys got that strong signal. Because see, the kids, the parents in Houston could hear it.
Right.
The Austin parents could hear.
Yeah. And now we've got the football package now, so we're going to be doing the A&M.
I mean, I've got all kind of letters, even from Mrs. Slocum. I'd send her a copy of the tape. Oh, thank you. I'd send a copy of the tape, and the parents would just come back and say, thank you so much for that copy. Hear my son testify about his faith.
Yeah.
Or my daughter. And so it was a blessing for me. But
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Did you talk about flying your own aircraft?
Over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about
That's
that.
pretty big.
That was the scariest thing in my life.
We're
74 hours, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
74, I may have misspelled some. 74 hours, I flew 54, and 22 of those were instruments.
Uh-huh.
One of my senior captains couldn't even hold, instrument flying was tough. He couldn't even hold straight and level an instrument. Because when you can't see anything, but we took off and left Newfoundland, and we have a visual omni range. And about 50 miles out, it just started going in circles. So we have no nav aids. So we're all flying 150 degrees, trying to hit a little bunch of islands called the Azores. But anyway, we went out on 2, and this big old 4-engine aircraft. It's the Air Force. We're returning. We lost 1 out of 4 engines. We said the Army, are we dumb or what? We're leaving with 2, and he's coming back. He has 3 left.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
Now, are these places that you stopped?
That was a route. I landed
That was
there.
the route. Okay. You landed at all of these places?
Yeah, I got fuel, and
Yeah.
some of them are touchy,
I'll bet.
even then. And what made it worse, we asked a lot of our young people, what made it worse is I was single ship then.
Mm-hmm.
It's different flying, and you look up there and there are all these other aircraft in front of you. But then my buddy had an emergency out of Azores, so it was just him and me. And then we decided at Torrejon, Spain, Madrid, he would go on. So Torrejon, Spain, I'm one ship going in all these foreign places. It was a little spooky.
Yeah.
And English is the international language in aviation, Tom, but you can't be sure of that when you're going in and out of other countries.
Right. Right.
You hope you're hearing what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Myrna.
Tell you what I'm going to do, because I'm going to later this afternoon. You have a DVD player?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to bring you a DVD of one of the shows just so you'll sort of know the format and just sort of how we do it. You can watch tonight. Okay? I'll find the one of Bob Pardo.
Myrna, are you getting out?
Yeah.
Where would you put it? Where would you have it?
I'll put it wherever you want me to put it.
Well, we may
bring
get
it.
out later. I just wondered if we could help you a little bit.
No, I can bring it back out here. You're not far away from where I live. I just live in College Station. I'll get it and just bring it by here. And if you're not here, I'll put it on the front porch or something. It's in a case and all that.
We come in and out of that
garage door? Okay.
door. If you just lean it, lean it there.
I'll do that. I'll just bring it some by this afternoon, and you can look at it tonight on your DVD and get an idea of the format. It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
Can we go back in here and look at some?
I would like to.